Hello, and welcome back to the Political Pulse. Today, we're honoured to be joined by Ben Harvey, Chief Reporter of the West Australian. Let's get into it.
All right, Ben, welcome to the Political Pulse. For people who know you as a journalist, but not as a person, who's Ben Harvey?
Ben Harvey is a very boring man who doesn't do very interesting things outside his job. Got a very, very interesting job, and as soon as he comes home, he does normal stuff like mow the lawn and go to Bunnings.
Who would Ben Harvey, the journalist, be then?
Ben Harvey, the journalist, is very different to Ben Harvey, the normal person. Journalism is the most bizarre job on earth. So you, as a journalist, you see people at their highs and at their lows. Like, a normal day is not newsworthy. So I'll give you an example. The principal of Scotch College goes to work, speaks to students, assigns homework assignments, makes sure that the school runs properly, and then goes home. That's not news. The principal of Scotch College goes to work and gets struck by lightning. That is news. The principal of Scotch College goes to work and finds out he's won $40 million in lotto. That's news. A normal day is not news. That's just life. So journalists see people who are having amazing things happen to them. Like they're a gold medalist, they've won lotto, they've had a near-death experience, they've had quintuplets, all these amazing stories that you read about. Or they're there because they've just had a family member taken by a shark off Rottnest or Albany. Or they've just been involved in a triple car crash. Or they're under investigation for a terrible crime. So the journalist Ben Harvey is someone that is accustomed to talking to people in extreme, heightened states of emotion. It's very rarely a normal conversation.
Well, we're going to turn our attention now to political or media bias, which has evolved over time. What impact do you think it now has on the way people understand politics and from their opinions and form their opinions?
So media bias has always been around. It's always been there. So the age of mass communication started in the 15th century with the invention of something called the Gutenberg printing press, which allowed pamphlets to be stamped out en masse, thousands and thousands. That was the first time we had mass communication. And I'm sure even back then in those early days, the people that were distributing the mass information quickly realised that people want to read or consume the views that they agree with. You don't want to be told you're wrong. And so the media's always done that. You've got right-wing newspapers, you've got left-wing newspapers. Britain's a really good example. So I worked in London for a few years a very long time ago, and you had newspapers like The Observer and The Guardian and The Independent, which were very far left, and then you had The Telegraph and The Sun and The Express, which were very far right. And then kind of in the middle-ish, you had The Times of London, which was still a little bit right. So I've seen this like up close and personal. It's completely normal for media bias to be there. People pick and choose which media product they want. Now that's just the media servicing the market. Some people want to drive a Ford Ranger with a diesel-powered 3.2 litre V6, and some people want a Prius. So it's just the market.
I guess on that though, do you think that's a positive to have a range of stuff along the political spectrum, or do you kind of think it would be better if it was kind of all in the neutral for news sources?
Ideally, it's all in the neutral. It never happens. So the ABC, publicly funded broadcaster, it should be neutral.
But we're starting to see a left tilt.
It's always been that way. Journalists, to be honest, always are a little bit lefty. Journalists, most of the time, they like the underdog story. You know, I'm the same. Like you want to back the person that's not having their voice heard. It's just this innate thing that journalists have. So that drags you to the left. If everything was completely unbiased and there was no pepper on the top of anything, it was just vanilla, that's called a newswire service like Associated Press or Reuters or Bloomberg, which is just you get the facts delivered to you. Now, people don't just want the facts. They don't. They want a bit of colour. They want a little bit of analysis. So they don't just want the news. They want to say, well, what does that actually mean? And as soon as a journalist puts their commentator hat on or their analyst hat on, that's when you get this left or right bias comes out, because a journalist is being asked for their personal opinion about something, which, you know, how their political views are will inform that personal opinion. So in a perfect world, yes, it would be great if news was completely neutral. The reality is no one would read it if it was.
Audience are now shifting from traditional news of newspapers and news bulletins to digital media and instant online updates. How do you think that's changed the overall outlook and direction of political reporting today?
So political reporting's had to get a lot faster. It used to be, so when I started as a journalist, I've been a journalist now since 1998, and I became a political reporter in 2002, I think it was. Back then, I might have written 2 stories a day, maybe. I didn't have to finish the story until 7 o'clock at night, even if I'd found out the story at 7 o'clock in the morning. And there was no one yelling at me for an update on a website, because we didn't really have a website for all intents and purposes. It was just the newspaper. So I had a really good job where I could go to the pub for lunch and stay there for a really, really long time. That doesn't exist anymore, because as soon as the politician says something, the journalist who would have been at the pub waiting for 7 p.m. has to get something out online immediately. And increasingly journalists are using their own socials. So as soon as they've filed a story for the actual news website, they're actually hitting their own Insta.
Do you think because of that digital shift, people are demanding news more rapidly?
I don't know about this. I think people are overwhelmed because there's just so much news out there. Like, I wake up in the morning and then after 20 minutes, I'm like, it's my job to keep on top of the news. And I'm just like, this is exhausting. Like, there's just too much stuff for me to get on top of, and a lot of it's contradictory. I think people, they certainly want updates on fast evolving news, big news, like in terms of natural disasters, in terms of elections, in terms of budgets, you know, that big ticket stuff. They want to know very quickly what's going on. Sometimes I think we flood the market. We're giving, you know, a news update on something that I'm like, did we really need to know that? Like, was that important for you to give me a flash update? And I've taken time out to actually look at what it is. And a lot of the time, you know what it's like. It's pretty clickbaity. And that's the nature of it. So I think we need to pump the brakes a bit in the media on that. I think people are getting a bit pissed off, to be honest. I get pissed off, and I'm in the job. So if I'm getting pissed off at it and overwhelmed, I can't imagine what everyone else is feeling.
Yeah.
So more impactful news or important news that's going to change people's lives or impact their
like
lives.
you limit it to, I think ideally you want a situation where if that phone buzzes with an update from a particular news site, whichever that might be, when you see it, you go, I need to see this. because this will have a material impact on my life. Like, I need to know this. And at the moment it buzzes and you just go blur. So, yeah, people want big news updates fast. I think we give too many updates.
And I guess looking at how journalism's changed over the past couple decades, what advice would you give to students now looking to go into journalism later on?
I would say journalism is a fantastic job. In life, there's a trade-off. If you have a job that you love, usually you don't get paid that much money. That's just the way it goes. It's a trade-off between having a job that's fun and having a job that makes you rich. You are never going to get rich being a journalist. Increasingly, because the business model behind journalism has changed, and newspapers used to be very wealthy. So there was an old expression, newspapers made billionaires out of millionaires. If you're a millionaire, you buy a newspaper, it was literally a license to print money, and you become a billionaire. And now we turn billionaires into millionaires because they lose a lot of money a lot of the time. The advice I'd give is this: absolutely do it. It is the funnest job you will ever have.
Is it round the clock?
It's not. It's not. Unless you want it to be. And the thing is, with good journalists, they want it to be because they're addicted to it. They want to be the first person to find out. They want the skinny every single time.
All right, so I guess swapping back to politics, you're obviously well-versed in the politics world. What do you think is the biggest change in politics over recent years, and how do you think this is going to change the new era of politics today?
The biggest change in politics is the rise of right-wing parties. So obviously you've got Trump in the United States, you've got One Nation in Australia, you've got Nigel Farage in Britain. There is, I haven't seen this in my career, a sustained push towards the right of the political spectrum. Right, we've always played in the centre. We go centre left, we go centre right. We've never actually pushed out into that sort of fake news Trump kind of space, and we are seeing that now. So that is without a doubt the biggest change that I've seen. Now, whether or not it's sustainable, Pauline Hanson's got 2 good polls under her belt. I think a lot of people tell pollsters one thing just to make a bit of trouble, and they do a different thing when it comes to the anonymity of the ballot box when they're voting. So I reckon they're signalling their dissatisfaction to Anthony Albanese.
So do you think it's periodic frustration?
Yeah, they're lashing out. They've got this budget that they think's crap, and cost of living's through the roof, and they can't afford anything, and fuel's expensive, and they saw the ISIS brides come back to Australia, which just was played to One Nation perfectly. And that came after the Bondi terror attacks pretty soon after. And you can understand the average person is like, so hang on, we saw a case of fundamentalist Islamic terrorism on Australian soil.
But we bring...
And now we've got a dozen...
Doesn't make sense. ...brides
of ISIS warriors coming back to Australia saying, oh, we didn't actually mean it. And Anthony Albanese is sitting there saying, oh, well, we're not helping them come back, but then they're still coming back, and they've got like a lawyer and they're in court arguing for their rights. And Pauline Hanson's basically saying, that's bullshit. And she's saying what everyone is pretty much thinking, which is this is nuts.
And in terms of media influence in politics currently, and especially with the growing concerns around fake media, how does media influence politics today?
So media influences politics this way. Everyone says to me, I don't read the newspaper. I don't look at the website. I don't watch Channel 7. I get all my news from TikTok, Facebook, Insta, blah, blah, blah. And I go, okay, I have never seen anyone from TikTok, Facebook or Insta at a crime scene at 1 o'clock in the morning. I've never been at a cyclone zone where someone from a social media giant is there reporting and getting information. I've never been in a budget lockup in question time in Parliament. I've never seen them at an annual general meeting of Wesfarmers or Woodside or Chevron or wherever. So when you think of that, where is that news coming from? How do they know what was said in Parliament or in question time? They're just getting their news from me
from
still,
mainstream media.
and it's just defrayed out. Because quite often I'll write a story and I'm the only person that knows that story, the only person that wrote the story.
Then you see
It's
a
everywhere.
real
And everyone's repeating the story. But there's a good example, like it's never the important stories that go viral. I wrote a story a few months ago about how, this is so bizarre, prisoners in a WA jail were eating guinea pigs.
I did hear about that, yeah.
Now, no one else, it wasn't like there was a press conference that was held and they announced this. I had to find this story out by speaking to some really dodgy ex-criminals and prison guards and all this kind of stuff. And so I wrote the story and I went everywhere. Everyone kind of knew about it. And I'm like, well, the only reason I knew about it is because a journalist actually did the journalism.
Yeah.
So in terms of how media impacts politics, traditional media, just as much as ever, but not immediately through their own masthead or their own channel. If I write a comment piece about why, Roger Cook should be junked as Premier, people will read that. They'll read it on different platforms. It won't be under my byline, but it's still out there. What I said is still out there. So traditional media still has a very, very big impact on politics. And the other thing is, with every newspaper in the world, the front page of the newspaper dictates the news agenda for the day. Whatever is on the front page of the newspaper, you'll hear it on radio being talked about, because everyone needs a bit of direction.
Who determines that leading story?
That's the editor.
All right.
Yeah. So the editor...
And what do they base that off?
They base it on a combination of gut feel, because they've been around for a long time and they know, well, if we put this story on the front page, 50% of people are going to get pissed off and they're not going to buy the newspaper. So we'll think twice about that. If we put this on the front page, it's just going to result in 50 complaints and a lawyer's letter, so we won't do that. It's a mix of what is the most important story / interesting story / story that will make someone buy the newspaper. Now, very rarely is the most important story, interesting story, and story that will make someone buy the newspaper the same story. That's very rare, when you get the three things all align. So it's an inexact science.
I guess, does that lead to a bit of compromise between the story that you'd like to see on the front page versus the story that the editors want to see on the front page?
Yes, I want to see all my stories on the front page. I've been doing this for a very long time, and I have edited the newspaper when people have been on holiday and that kind of stuff. So I understand the pressures, and every journalist wants their story to be on the front page. But it just depends on the mix of stories on the day, and sometimes there's too many crime stories, and so you can't get all the crime stories on the front page. Sometimes there's too many boring economic stories. There are so many different pressures and values that go into what goes on the front page.
So I guess moving on, you run the Up Late show. What is Up Late? And how much has the shift to digital media changed what the show has become today?
So I'll ask the second parts first about the shift to digital media. There would not be an Up Late if we didn't have a shift to digital media. So we've been doing this show now for 5 years. it's arrived. It had an environment to be in because of the shift to digital media. If we'd done it 10, 15 years ago, it would have been really out of place. It just wouldn't have had an ecosystem to sit inside. So that's the second part of the question. The first part of the question is what is up late? What is up late is an old man yelling at a camera basically a lot of the time about a great number of things that piss him off. He thinks probably piss a lot of other people off. Things that he's confused by and thinks other people would be confused by, or things that he finds very funny. And when I say very funny, it's stuff that I find funny because I will hear a politician say something and I think that's total bullshit. He said the complete opposite thing 5 years ago, and the best part of my job is being able to find the clip from 5 years ago where Angus Taylor or Anthony Albanese or Pauline Hanson or Roger Cook or Basil Zempler said something completely different to what they're saying now, and pointing
Drawing
out
that contrast.
playing it side by side and calling crap.
And how do you go about finding those clips?
It's a lot of it is memory. So I'll just remember, hang on, something will jar, and I'm like, that doesn't sound right. Like, I'm sure that they've said something different before. And then it's a case of just literally trawling through various archives, a lot of Googling.
Now, in 2021, the Western Australian I think it was you that named yourself the official opposition as a result of the actual opposition receiving only 2 seats. Was that just a what was that thought provoked by, and what were you trying to say about media and accountability in politics?
Governments of the day are held to account in a handful of ways. The most obvious way that executive government is held to account is through the parliament. And that's where the opposition parties, the minor parties, have certain mechanisms, even though they don't have the numbers, as they say, where they can ask questions, where they can demand answers, where they can call for inquiries, where they can use the committee system to actually cut through the government spin to work out what's going on. So that's the first and most important way. The second way that governments are held to account is through the judiciary. If something is ruled by the courts to be wrong, unconstitutional, in various breaches of various acts or whatever. A third way that governments are held to account is through the fourth estate, media. Quite often, the parliament and the courts can affect government, but only with the media covering what they've uncovered. That's what really holds government to account. The government can't ignore parliament, it can't ignore the courts, but they are far quicker to act when they know the media is telling them, hang on, the Supreme Court has just given you a very big slap in the face there. Or hang on, the leader of the opposition has got a very good point when he asks this question about the price of the Burswood racetrack or something like that. So it's very, very important.
Well, I was just going to say, it's going to help me with my test next week. We're learning about accountability right this second in politics, so I guess it's a good thing we got to talk about.
You can plagiarise that.
Yeah, exactly.
And do you think media have a bigger influence on people's decisions and opinions than politicians asking the questions to the government, or the opposition asking the questions to the government?
Very good opposition MPs can ask questions that will really rattle the government. So when you see Question Time, right, and they're all yelling at each other and calling each other's name and behaving like 10-year-olds, like I've observed it now for a very long time, generations of politicians come through. It's pathetic. And most people think that Question Time is when real democracy happens. That's the parliament doing its thing. It's not. It's all theatre. It's either theatre for the cameras, theatre for the press gallery, or most usually it's theatre for the politicians themselves. So it's a bit of cheerleading. So when Anthony Albanese stands up and talks about this wonderful initiative, he doesn't really care that anyone's listening in the press gallery. He's talking to his own
they all
MPs.
direct it down the barrel of the camera and then turn it into social media, videos now.
So it's just like
Publicity sort of
it
stuff.
is a content generating machine for them. And when the opposition rails against the government about being corrupt and not having its finger on the pulse, they're as much doing that to let their MPs behind them know, look, we're a team. We're giving it to the government. So it's pretty tribal, quite primal. It doesn't really affect government. Where opposition politicians can be effective in holding or scaring government is when they have certain processes in Parliament, like the budget estimates process. This is where they sit there and they can say to a minister, I want you to answer this. And if the minister does not answer truthfully, it's contempt of court and contempt of Parliament and they can go to jail. It's a very serious offence. So some MPs use that effectively, not many of them. Generally speaking, the Prime Minister would be far more worried about a question from the chief political reporter at the Australian newspaper than he would be a question in Question Time by Angus Taylor.
What's your obsession with bikies?
So I don't like bikies. Bikies overwhelmingly are idiots, violent. They're not the kind of person you want to ride share with. The reason that I write a lot about them is more by accident than anything else. I don't like writing about bikies. People like reading about bikies. That's the reality. Look, I'm not speaking out of school here, and I'm not the only journalist where this has happened to. There have been occasions where I have answered my front door and there's been a very heavily armed police officer saying you've got to get out of your house.
Because there's a potential threat.
Yep. I've got colleagues who had to move out of their house for quite a period of time because the police said there is a clear and present threat against you. They pick it up usually on a telephone intercept. So they'll be listening into a bikie's conversation about something else and they'll hear them say, and by the way, we're going to Ben Harvey's house to blow it up.
All right.
So no, I don't know of any journalist. Actually, I do know journalists who have been physically harmed. I've been punched out twice on the job.
All right.
A long time ago.
Do they report on that or do you not? No.
Like I know if I go to a pub and if there is a bikie there who I have taken the piss out of and he's with his mates and he's been drinking, then I've got a very big problem. So I just don't go to the pubs they go to. That's the rule. This idea that, a journalist's house is going to get blown up or anything like that, that's an extreme position. That's never happened in Australia. I have, journalists have had their houses shot up.
Oh, right.
That has happened.
Yeah.
Not regularly, but it's not unprecedented. But it's not like in Mexico where drug cartels are literally killing 24 journalists every couple of years. Thank God. Or it could be a good start depending on how you think of these things.
Well, to finish, what are 3 things you would like to see the government change right now for the benefit of Western Australians?
So thank you for giving me a heads up about that question so I could actually have a think about it. And I was thinking you could have these really big, society changing initiatives and this kind of stuff. And I thought that's just not going to change people's life on a day-to-day basis. So what I would like to see, and I wrote it down, is I would like them to see, this is so boring, amalgamate local councils. So we don't have 140 something local councils. It's just nuts. I just don't believe that we live such different lives between, say, Mount Lawley and North Perth, or
Particularly
Swanbourne
in
and
this area, Cottesloe, Peppermint Grove,
pretty
got
much
its
the
own
same.
shire.
They're all pretty much the same people doing the same things. I don't understand why they need different bin collection sort of regimes and all this kind of stuff. So that to me, I think, is just ridiculous. There's just too many local councillors, and as soon as you've got lots of local councillors, it means nothing happens. Because let's think about, why would you run to be a local councillor? Usually it's because you've heard something's happening down the street and you want to stop it. That's the reality. That's why you become a local councillor. Or you're just a maniac that wants a bit of power. Either way, we don't want you in politics, deciding public policy. So that's number one. Number two, for this government in Western Australia, this is even more boring than local council amalgamations, which is saying something. We've got a problem with an insect called the shot hole borer. You would know about this?
I have heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically wiping out all the trees in the metropolitan area. Right now, the government, who is responsible for this calamity because they weren't on top of things years ago, is washing its hands of it and saying it's something that, you know, the local council can deal with. And we are going to lose literally a quarter of the trees in Perth if we don't do something about it, and the government needs to do that. The third thing is the government needs to stop spending so much money on crap. They just spend, if you worked out how much of your tax dollars when you start paying tax gets spent on just stuff that has no value, you will get very, very angry and probably want to start your own show. So they just need to stop. Governments thinks that to solve a problem, they've got to spend money. You know, the first thing the State Treasurer says when she's announcing a new initiative in health, it's never a clinical breakthrough or better training for doctors. It's just, we're spending $800 million on a new hospital. We're spending $1.9 million on this. It's always dollars, 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 dollars. No one ever says we've got a new thing that is going to actually make patient care more humane or something like that. It's a dollar response. If they can't throw dollars at it, they feel like they're not fixing the problem. And money does not fix every problem.
And do you think the government's misread their approach on building a racetrack, particularly when people are struggling and not really able to go out and entertain?
Yeah. It's not a great look at the moment. I don't think as catastrophic for the government as Basil Zemplis is making out. To be honest, I don't even know if Basil Zemplis really cares that much if there's a racetrack. He just sees an issue that is a lightning rod for certain people, and he can wedge the government and he can niggle Rita Saffioti, and he loves to niggle Rita Saffioti. He just kind of gets in there, drives her nuts. So with the racetrack, she's saying that it's going to cost $217.5 million. I wrote a column a few months ago saying if she can bring that in at $217.5 million, I will do the first lap stark naked on my feet on the opening round, because it's never going to happen. It will be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of $1 million more than that. And when the truth comes out, then they've got a problem. So they shouldn't have been so stupid as to say we can bring this thing in at 200.
Yeah, why not come out honest?
They should have been honest to begin with. They should have then said, look, we're changing the scale. It is going to be more expensive. We can't build anything for $200 million, let alone an entire new racetrack. And it's not like just laying bitumen on a road.
Yeah, well, the problem, I think, didn't they diversify the whole project by bringing in new elements to attract new audience, and that's just going to drive the cost up?
So they, it started off as a racetrack, and now they don't mention the racetrack. It's Perth Park, and it's like it's a community event with an amphitheatre, and it's like we can go and, do, it's almost like it's a garden. It's a racetrack. There are going to be V8 supercars burning petrol as it goes around the racetrack. Now, I'm a bit agnostic. I think that they will have a problem when the final price does come out.
Well, thank you, Ben, for joining us today
Thanks
on
for
the
having me.
Political Pulse.
I hope I made some sense at some point. Please edit it well.
It was a very interesting podcast.
It was a bit more fun than usual, We got a bit.
I enjoyed that.